we're talking about whether we believe a man. Do we believe him when he comes back from abroad with, with these people, with this woman who he says is his wife, or with these children who he says are his children? Interestingly, we've said that we believe them. We seem to believe the mother, by the way. Interesting that we believe the mother. And the Mishnah then segues into a question of whether we can allow the man to be alone with, well, with a woman who he's not married to. So we're closing the Mishnah of Kiddushin. We're reflecting on questions of trust, just as we've discussed in the last few Mishnayot. And we're also, I suppose, we're reflecting on the consequences of not having Kiddushin, of not being married. And so the Mishnah opens, a man can't be alone with two women. I mean, the Mishnah, this assumes, by the way, that these are women he's not married to. Or, I mean, we'll see that in a second, the Mishnah will clarify. And the Mishnah assumes, by the way, that we already know. So the Mishnah doesn't bother teaching that a man shouldn't be alone with one woman. I think the Mishnah treats that as obvious. The question is, could he be alone with two women? In other words, would two women together be trusted to would two women together be trusted to maintain moral standards? That's the question. And really interestingly, the Bartanura comments at this point, and he's quoting the Gemara. Why shouldn't a man be alone with two women? Because they're light-headed. They're da'atan kala. We're not talking about their intellectual achievements here. Da'atan kala, their knowledge is light. We're talking about their moral judgment. Let's just read the rest of the Bartanura. Because they're lightheaded and they kind of enjoy being flirted with. And the view of the Bartanura is quoting Maimonides here. So maybe Maimonides is influenced by Greek thought. Okay, Aristotle thought that a hive couldn't be ruled by a female queen bee, because a queen couldn't rule a hive. But there's a train in rabbinic thought that women don't seem to have the maturity to make moral judgments. And then maybe this comes out of this Mishnah. A man shouldn't be alone with two women. And then we're going to contrast now the ability of two men to effectively jointly make moral judgments. But one woman can be alone with two men, as if somehow we trust two men. This is very, very different, I think, from the kind of advice we would give a teenage girl going to college today. So, I mean, clearly there's been a change in men's moral or immoral behavior, but between the time of the Mishnah and today's timing. And by the way, the Bartanura, let's go back to the Bartanura. The halacha does not accept this idea. The Bartanura explains the Mishnah as saying, she'echad bosh mechaberov, one is embarrassed from his fellow. In other words, the two men together will kind of keep each other on the straight and narrow. But he goes on to say, psak halacha lo. But the psak halacha is not like this at all. Lo tityached isha achat im shtei anashim. A woman shouldn't be alone with two men. And then the kol sheken isha echad im shtei nashim, and all the more so one man with two women. In other words, the halacha doesn't seem to accept either of these two get-outs. And is essentially saying, look, sexual desire is really powerful, and please just stay well away from it. But and Rabbi Shimon Omer af isha, and Rabbi Shimon agrees. Rabbi Shimon Omer af isha chad mitjachet. And Rabbi Shimon disagrees. Rabbi Shimon Omer af ish echad mitjachet im shtei nashim. Rabbi Shimon says, look, one man could be alone with two women, so maybe he respects their moral judgment, or maybe we're leading into the next part of what is this Mishnah in the classic printed text. But by the way, and I've put a little 14 in brackets for you, in the Kaufman manuscript is a different Mishnah. So Kaufman breaks the Mishnayot at this point with a Mishnah numbering. But Rabbi Shimon is saying, okay, a man can be alone with two women, and the Mishnah text continues, Bisman she'ishto imo, when his wife is with him. So we trust him when his wife is with him. And then the Mishnah goes on to say, Yasheni mahen b'pudaki mipnei she'ishto mishamrato. When his wife is with him, he can sleep with him in an inn because his wife guards him. So we're all in one giant bed in this inn. And obviously, rooms in this inn were not as widely available as they are today. This must be more like an alpine hut where you have one dormitory for the men and one dormitory for the women, and everybody's basically sleeping in one giant row, or maybe just one dormitory. Adam im imor im bitor. A man can be alone with his mother and his daughter, and can sleep with them in body contact. When they grow up, each must sleep in their own garment. So again, we seem to be getting into social conditions and economic conditions, just as we are into moral issues. And the Gemara continues with this kind of mix of social and economic issues. Lo yilamed ravak sofrim. We don't teach an unmarried man to be a scribe. V'lo telamed isha sofrim. And we don't teach a woman. A woman doesn't learn to be a scribe at all. And Rabbi Elazar goes on. Rabbi Elazar says, Af misha'ein imo isha, even someone who has no wife with him, lo yilamed sofrim, shouldn't be a scribe. And again, the Bartanura explains, and he's quoting the Gemara and the Rambam, but I brought the Bartanura because he's concise. Lo yargilat small liot min hasofrim. He shouldn't accustom himself to be among the scribes. Kolomar melamed tinokot. That is to say, to teach children. The scribes knew how to write and they knew how to read, and so they knew how to teach. And why shouldn't a bachelor teach? Mipnei imote hen shel tinokot, because of the mothers of the children. Shemutzuyot etzlo lahavi et bnei hen el beit hasefer, because the mothers of these children are to be found near him, bringing their children to school. A bachelor is in contact with mothers, and we can't allow this. And the Mishnah continues. The next Mishnah is a page long, and we won't finish it. But Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Lo yireh ravak behema. Rabbi Yehuda says an unmarried man mustn't tend cattle. So we can see the kind of power, the power and the fear, the power with which the Mishnah regards male sexual desire, and for that matter, the fear. This unmarried man, not only must he not be a scribe in case he's attracted to the women who bring their children, he mustn't be a tender of cattle in case he wants to have unnatural relationships with them. And two unmarried men shouldn't sleep together onto the same cover. So we've said, by the way, we're going to allow this man to sleep with women in the inn while his wife is with him, but when they're unmarried, not even with another man. Although v'chachamim materin, but the sages permit it. And the Mishnah continues, Kol she'iskoi men Hashem lo yitacheri men Hashem. Anyone whose business is with women shouldn't be alone with women. Someone a gynecologist, classic example. Someone whose business is with women shouldn't be alone with women. And a person shouldn't teach his son a trade among women. The Mishnah seems to be incredibly scared about male contact with women. And essentially, he's saying, look, please just stay away from any situation in which there might be temptation.